where you learn about tkinter, Python, and creating very simple applications. This video is going to show you how to load and delete multiple images in Python's tkinter canvas. Right here is the application. We'll just run you through how the application works, and then we will take you through the code that creates this application. So this is what it looks like. All this is going to do is just load the image on the canvas, which is the black area we have here, and then delete the image from the canvas. These other buttons do not work. Only two buttons that work are open and delete. And to the right here in the canvas, we have two entry widgets. These are the widgets that I'm going to use to determine the position of my images on the canvas. So let's say I want my first image to be placed 500 units to the left of the canvas, and let's say 150 units from the top of the canvas. And then I can go ahead to open the image. Okay, so let's say I load this image. Okay, good. So this is where the image is loaded. We've loaded the first image. Let's load our second image. I will be changing the width value here. Sorry, I'll be changing the X position value. Let's say 400. And then I'll use the open function again to load another image. So let's say I load this. All right, good. So we have two images, one overlapping the other. I'm going to load one more image, this time around 200 units from the left. I do not think I want the images to overlap this time around. So this is going to be the third image that we're going to load, and then I'm going to show you how you can click on the image and then delete. All right, good. So we have three different images on the canvas. This tutorial just wants to show you how you can load images in your tkinter canvas, how you can select these images, and then how you can have to delete them one after the other. So when I click on any of the image, I have a message on the screen that tells me image with ID 2 clicked. Okay, when I click on this, it's going to tell me image with ID 3 clicked. And when I click on the first image, image with ID 1 click. Now, this is actually telling me which image has been selected and on which image the delete action can actually be carried out. So if I click the second image, image with ID 2 clicked, when I delete, the second image is going to be deleted. All right, view 2 will now be removed. All right, so that's just it. When I click on the first image, it tells me that I have clicked on the first image. We don't necessarily have to mind the message that pops up on the screen. It's just for me to be able to monitor the results of my program. Now I can delete the first image and then click on the last image and then delete the last image. All right, so that is just what this video is just going to illustrate. And then we're going to go to the code to see how we were able to create this. All right, so this is the code that actually creates that window. What we have here in the code, uh, we have a class, we have some import statements, we have a pixmos class, and then we have several methods that help us achieve this. Right now, we will be talking about the code that creates that application. It's just for illustrative purposes, so nothing so serious. So the first thing we have is from lines 1 to 3, we have a series of import statements. We import our modules and our packages that help us to achieve what we've achieved. So first we import tkinter, that is what helps us create the application window, and then the widgets we use, our canvas widget, our entry widget, a button widgets, and other things that we use. And then we have from peel import image tk. Now this is a Python imaging library. called pillow and peel for short. So we use these module, and we use functions inside of the image module to achieve what we've achieved. And the next thing is we import file dialog and message box from tkinter. These are modules that also help us to achieve several things. For example, the file dialog module helps us to access the computers, helps you to access your computer's file system, helps you to access the File Explorer, and then have access to files that you would like to use. Now, the message box module is what helps us to have the pop-up on the screen each time we click on any of the images. All right, so we have a class Pixmus. We have a Pixmus class. That's the name of our application class. And then the first thing we have is the initialization of this class. We have the init method here, which is very important for classes when you create a class. So here we have a window. We set the window title to Pixmus. So this is just the basic setup for the application. We have an interface, and inside of the interface, of course, this interface is directly lodged in the window. And inside of the interface, we have an image viewer, that is the canvas. And then inside of the canvas, we have two entry widgets that allow us to type in the X and Y values regarding the position of our images on the screen. And then after that, we have variables here that we have defined, variables that we're going to use to work with our image. We have the self.photo, self.new underscore view, self.selected, self.views underscore list, and self.image underscore reference. The self.image underscore reference is going to help us reference the tkinter images. As we know, if you don't reference images, these images they become the object of garbage collection, and then they get lost in your program. And then we have self.app here. We are invoking this method. All right, so let's see what the self.app method does. This is where we pack the interface. This is where we also create image underscore actions. The image underscore actions frame contains the buttons that we use to interact with the image. That is where we find the open button. That is where we find the delete button and other buttons that we didn't use. So this is where that frame has been created and has been packed. We also have the image viewer packed here. It was created in the init method here. Yes, the image viewer was created in the init method, but we've packed it here. Not necessarily very important. And then we have our action group, a tuple of strings that we use to create the actions we use to interact with the images. So you can see action underscore group, and then we use for loop. Okay, so here we have a for loop that helps us create these buttons at once. We don't have to create the buttons one after the other. We use the for loop to create the buttons. We run the loop through the action underscore group, and then we create the buttons. And then we check for which of the buttons is being created at the moment and assign a function to that button. For example, in line 37, we check if the action is open. And if the action is open, we're able to assign the self.get underscore image method to it, and also assign the self.load underscore viewer method. These two methods are going to do different things. The get image method is going to help us access the file system, select the image we want, and then the self.load underscore viewer is going to help us load the image onto the canvas. So these two functions are invoked. They are assigned to the command attribute of the button when the button being created is the open button. And then if it's the delete button that is being created, we assign a function to the command attribute self.delete underscore view. We're going to see what these functions or what these methods, since we're dealing with a class, we are going to see what all these methods do. And that's how we've done it. And then outside of the for loop, we call the main loop method that helps us create our window. Now we're ready to move on to talk about the different methods. So first we have a get underscore image method. This method is simply just going to get the image that we want to work with using the file dialog module, which has a function called ask open file name. This function is going to return the file name of the file that you actually want to open. And then we're going to return this file name. So that's all this function is going to do. That's all this method is going to do. It's going to help us access File Explorer, select an image, and it's going to return the name of that image. That is all it's going to do. So I'm going to jump to the self.loads underscore viewer function because that's the next. So after the image has been loaded, the image is provided as an argument for the load underscore viewer method. Also, the image viewer, which is the canvas where we're going to see the image, is also provided as an argument for the load underscore viewer method. So what this load underscore viewer method is going to do now is it's going to open the image that we have. It's going to open the image, yes, that we previously accessed in File Explorer. And it's going to do this using the image module from Peel to do that. And then when it opens, we're going to resize the image using the resize function of the image module. And then after we do that, we will use image TK to convert the image to a tkinter image so that it can be displayed in the canvas and save in self.photo. If you remember very clearly, self.photo is one of the variables that we defined in the init methods that we're going to be using. I've done that so that it can be accessible all over the program. And then after we've done that, we have a TK image we can now create on the canvas. And then we go ahead to do that here. So we have image underscore viewer dot create image. So this is the tkinter canvas, which has a method called create underscore image that is used to draw an image on the canvas. And what we have here is the X position and then the Y position. If you remember, we have two entry widgets that are lodged inside of, yes, two entry widgets are lodged inside of the canvas. So the value of the first widget is going to determine the X position on the canvas, and the value of the second widget will determine its Y position on the canvas. So we get them here, we get the values here, and we convert them to integers so that they can be used. And then we use the image attribute to specify the tkinter image we want to be drawn, and then we use the anchor attribute as well. So basically this is the code that helps us to load the image. And then inside of the load underscore viewer function, we do several other things. We need to be able to determine that we can click on the image and be able to detect which of the images we've clicked. So we are using the tag underscore bind method of our canvas to bind the images tag or the images ID with the left mouse button. That's the left click button of the mouse. Bind to it's helping us bind to the left mouse button the or tag or the ID of the image to, yes, binds it to the button so that when the button is clicked, we're able to detect which of the images haven't clicked. And this is passed as arguments to the listen underscore view underscore click method here. It's going to take the event and the ID as its arguments. So once we're done here, we're going to look at the listen underscore view underscore click method to see how it works. All right, now these are two other variables that we defined in the init method, self.image underscore ref dot append. Now this is actually when we defined this variable, it was defined as an empty list. This has been done so that we can actually reference multiple images at the same time. So that's why we're using a list. You can also use a dictionary. Yes, you can use a list, you can use a dictionary. Possibly you could use a set depending on what you want. So that's what this is used for. And then we have the image itself. We have the image ID here, self.views underscore list dot append. So we also have a list where we load all the IDs of the images that have been created, that have been loaded. All right, so we will go to the self.listen underscore view underscore click function to see how it works. So what this method actually does is when we click on any of the images, it's going to help us detect. It's going to show us a message. Image clicked. Okay, image clicked info, F image with ID clicked. Okay, what's going on here is MBX. If you remember, we imported message box as MBX. So it's time for us to use the message box. And what we're going simply going to do is we're going to pop a message is going to pop up on the screen. It's going to tell us which of the images have been clicked. Now we should remember that the ID of the image has been bound to the left mouse button, So when we click the left mouse button, it's going to send the ID of the image into this function, and then we can actually output it in a message box. And then we are going to assign to this variable the ID that has been clicked, self.selected. So we assign the ID to this variable. And why have we done this? We've done this so that when we want to delete the variable from the canvas, we can actually have access to what has been clicked. So here, this is the delete underscore view method that helps us delete the image from the canvas. And how does it work? It checks if self.selected is an empty string. Of course, initially when we defined it, it was an empty string. And then when we click any of the images, self.selected is going to be assigned the ID of the image we click. So when we click the delete button, it's going to check if self.selected is empty. If it's empty, the message box is going to pop up, and then it's going to display a message again. Now, if it is not empty, then we're going to assign that ID to the current view, and then we'll display a message that tells you that the image that has been selected is about to be deleted. And you have to choose whether you want it to be deleted or not. And that is what we have here with the if and elif statements. We have yes, no. Inside of yes, no, we have the message box dot ask yes, no. Ask yes, no is a function of the message box module, and it allows you to present the users with options. If the users click yes, then the function is going to return true. If the user clicks no, the function is going to return false. So if the user clicks yes, that means the user actually wants to delete the image. And we can now go ahead to say this view will now be removed. And then we can now use the delete method of the canvas to delete that view. The delete method of the canvas takes an ID, searches for the image that has the ID in it, and then deletes the image. And then after we've done that, we are going to render self.selected empty because the image that has been selected has been deleted. So it's going to be empty again. And then we are going to remove that image from the list of images that we stored in the self.views underscore list. And then if we choose no, actually, the pop-up is going to say view not deleted. So basically, this is what we have, and this is how the program runs. Not so much just to practice. Get to again is we're going to run the program again. I'm going to close it here, and then I'm going to run my Python script again here. So we see how it works again. All right, so this is the application here. Again, the save and the merge buttons do not work. Of course, you could also write a method that helps you to save your file after you have resized it and done other things to it. You can merge. So these are just for show. So again, I need to determine how my image is placed on the screen. So I'm going to have 600, and then I'm going to have 160. And then I'll use the open function here to load my image. We'll be loading entirely different images now. So I can load this. Okay, good. And then I need to change this, let's say 400. Going to load another image. You can actually load any image format that you have, JPG, PNG, as long as we're using Pillow to work with our images. All right, good. And I'm going to load the last image. Okay, let's have this soldier. All right, so I have three images loaded in my tkinter canvas. So again, any one of the images you click will be recognized. So this was the first image that we loaded, and it says image with ID1 clicked. This was the third image with ID3 clicked. This was the second image with ID2 clicked. So whichever one of the images I decide to delete is the one I will have to click. If I want to delete the last, I have to click it. And then when I click on delete, it asks me, do you really want to delete this view? And I say yes. And it says view 3 will now be removed. Okay. And then view 3 is removed. If I desire to remove view 1 or image 1, first click on it. Now, there are other things you could do, as you would see in image editors. For example, when you select an image, you'd find around the borders of that image, you could find serrated rectangles or just a rectangle around the image. So that's something you could also learn how to do, something we could also look at in our next video, show you how to do that. We could also look at how to merge images together, how to group images together and then move them together, how to use an image as a background, how to, create a transparency fill for one image when it is placed under, when it's the background for another image, and other things that we can do. Stay tuned and make sure you practice good.